Hello. It's been an honor to sit here and understand where you come from, and also to understand how that relates to a lot of things that are going on here, specifically in Providence, Rhode Island, because this is also Indian country here. I'd like to just ask you a question, and it might be, so it's not an easy question, but you alluded to it, as far as you were talking about some of our people on the island thinking about sovereignty and some of these concepts. What I want to ask you this is, have you considered, or has your organization considered, the implications of status? It's a two-part question. There's status as far as the status of the island, and it's kind of a never-ending colonial status, which doesn't give it any sovereignty or self-determination. And there's also the status of the Puerto Rican people. The reason I asked this question, let me just first disclose. I'm chief of the tribe and nation registered under the Hague Trust, part of something called the Federation of Aboriginal Nations of America, which has had some advances here. I am chief of the Sibukubayamontaino tribe of Puerto Rican people. I've organized my family into a trust and helped them to work on status because it's such an important thing. So this kind of has to do with misclassification, Black, Negro, Hispanic, Latino, as opposed to indigenous, Taino, Garifuna, Kalinago, all these identities. So I just kind of wanted to ask you that question and see what you thought.
I don't know if I know how to answer that question, but I'll give it, I don't use the term Hispanic. I don't even use the word Latino. It means nothing to me. I have no idea what a Latino or Hispanic is, other than that the person speaks Spanish. And you could be from anywhere and speak Spanish and not be a person of African or indigenous ancestry. And being Latino doesn't make you a person of color. But I will say that for years I respected the sovereignty of Puerto Ricans on the island to determine what direction they wanted to go in, because I was born and raised in New York City. And I think as of late, particularly after Hurricane Maria, that I felt like the Puerto Rican diaspora has a say. And I think that the Puerto Rican diaspora has a say because we ended up in the United States because of extraction. We ended up in the United States because we were considered excess population, because our land was basically taken over for petrochemical industries, and our people, like my grandmother comes from a place called El Fanguito in Puerto Rico, which is like the equivalent of favela, the worst slum in Puerto Rico, where she lost half her children to hunger and disease because of extraction. And so I come from struggle, and so I feel like I have a say in what happens in Puerto Rico. And I think it's a little different than the generation before us that said, we're not going to get involved in the sovereignty issue. And so our investment in Puerto Rico is an investment in sovereignty. It's an investment in just transitions and creating local livable systems where people can move away from dependency and move towards economic independence and not have to depend on the United States for anything. And so as a movement, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure what we've been told, for example, is don't send us any more money, help us buy land. Moving for repatriation, basically having people buy up farmland so that people of Puerto Rico don't ever have to depend on the United States for food again. So those are some of the things that we're doing. I don't know if I answered your question completely, but it was a complicated question, and I'm not going to lie, I don't know everything about Puerto Rico. I'm doing the best that I can. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
There's a slow.
Oh, I see you. Beautiful. I gotta say that it really is. You have no idea how my heart feels to look out and see so many community people in this audience. This is everything for me. I feel so honored, and it gives me so much joy. I just wanted to let you know how grateful I am that you left your children or your families, or you brought your children, that you came this evening to hear me. I really hope and pray that somehow I was able to make it into your hearts, because this means everything to me. Does anybody have any questions?
Batman, Tumbaka, when the honorable Chini, the Batman, I hope
Just speaking the original language of Rhode Island. I'm a direct descendant of Massasoit, King Phillips, so I welcome you to our community, and I respect what you've been saying. What I'd like to offer here, I'm a chief of the Pocasset Pokanoket tribe of the nation of Rhode Island, as well as Massachusetts, and what we're doing with indigenous Puerto Ricans and other indigenous groups from Latin America, South America, North America, is we're welcoming them into our nation and helping them with health care. So I'd like to invite you to our table so that we can discuss how we can solve some of the problems as well. So I don't have a question, but I just want to offer that, I hope.
Thank you. Any questions in the back? Yeah. There's one in front. Did I miss one in front? Oh, okay, here? Okay. Okay.
I think we can hear you.
We
You
can-
all just
yeah.
yell.
So, first of all, we are the Puerto Rican Professionals Association of Rhode Island, and we would like to welcome you and thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And after recognizing what a wonderful thing you just did of taking time to explain to us a little bit of the climate change initiative and what all this wonderful work that you are doing and trying to do, my question is, what can we do? So we are not an association as big as yours. We don't have the network that you probably have, but we would like to know, what can we do? What's something that is doable, realistic, and is within our reach to actually make an impact in the island?
I am really glad that you just said that, because you're assuming that my organization is big and it's just 5 of us. So let me just tell you, we organize and we develop leadership. We organize the largest gathering of young people of color on climate change in the country. We are 5 people. I didn't never study anything on the environment. I basically know that I'm resourceful and I'm smart and I can look things up, and that I can surround myself with people who are really knowledgeable, so that I don't have to know everything. And so it is being resourceful. It's knowing people who will support you in a common vision. It's being clear about what the vision is, and it's about community building and organizing. And so even though it's a small organization, and we are small, and we're small because we don't always accept funds, and sometimes we send them back. Because we don't believe that you compromise on justice. But what we got is people. And so we give the feeling of we are impactful. We've stopped the siting of power plant. We've doubled the amount of open space. We've sent 3 young people to Antarctica on scientific expeditions and 2 to the North Pole, all from around the block. We believe that our young people are not at risk, that they have potential because we were them once. And so we have been involved in planning. We basically expanded when our elders came to us, and we also listen and follow the leadership of the people on the ground. Because while they are working or they're in school, we are there looking out. So when our elders came to us and told us they wanted their bus back and the bus had to take it, we're like, okay, we'll organize a coalition, but you have to lead. This is how you do the talking points. We train them. They got their bus back. After the elders got their bus back, they were convinced we could do anything. Oh, mija, I can't cross the street. I'm like, roadkill. Can you help us expand the median? I'm like, okay, let me show you about planning. Let's put the language of planning so that you know how to talk to the Department of Transportation and the Economic Development Corporation. They expanded the median, and now it's 30% safer. When our community came to us 5 years ago and said we're getting displaced, and our organization had no history doing any displacement work, and they said, it's got to be you guys because we trust you. We said, okay, we're going to organize a coalition. We're going to start, get you engaged in learning about the rezoning process. And so we didn't know. So we contacted a bunch of people who were really knowledgeable in those areas, and we became experts in it. And so now we're an expert on energy, brownfields, super funds, leadership development. We have developed a number of expertises in a number of areas that impact our people because our people asked us to do that. But more importantly, we train them to lead. So that if we are not available or we can't do something, it is their responsibility to lead, and we follow their leadership. So we're small. So UpRose is a small organization. But the Climate Justice Alliance is made up of 50 organizations across the country. It is much, much bigger. And we've got people in Detroit, we've got people in Richmond, California, in San Antonio, we've got people in the Gulf South. And what we do with each other is we educate each other and we share expertise. And so as long as you are part of a group of people that is sharing information, you're going to be okay. And you shouldn't expect to know everything. You don't have to, but you need to know somebody who knows that. And you need that, and you need to know that that you can trust them. You also need to know how to use media, and you also need to know how to organize using social media. You know that a good tweet can really mess with an elected official. I believe in that. Yeah. So really, there are other ways of being resourceful without having a lot of money. And also thinking about stakeholders in a broader way of who your allies are. Like, for example, a lot of people don't think about small businesses, and we think that the bodegas and small businesses, those are our people. And those are economic anchors in our community, and we want to be able to support them and make them and provide them with resources so that they can become climate adaptable. So for example, an environmentalist would want to close down an auto salvaging shop because of all the chemicals they use. But to us, those are our people who are working there who don't have a formal education. So we educate them on how to containerize the chemicals, how to basically create an environmentally healthy space so that they're not exposed to any of the contaminants. We see that as part of our base. So you have to do some of this assessment of who's doing what. How can I complement what people are doing so that we're not competing? Because people do that a lot. What's the niche that and how can we provide resources? And you will find that you're a hell of a lot smarter and more badass than you ever thought you were.
I have a question.
I have a question. No, not a question. It was a comment. I want to answer the question. She talked about what's going on in New York. I'm going to let you know what's going on right here. Providence, Rhode Island, real quick. You know what I'm saying? Because we've been fighting National Grids. They want to build a LNG facility. And so the Puerto Rican professional, I know Elia. So, and I talked to her about this. So it would be great collaboration, but just to let you know that we've been fighting for almost 2 years right here in Providence, Rhode Island. We've been fighting National Grid to stop the construction of a liquefied natural gas facility. So by all means, after this, please come to me and I will tell you what you can do to help us out. Thank you.
So just to pause for a second, we're going to go to Leah next. Monica, that was your little spiel. So after this, we're going to have table breakups. That's one of the tables. So she already did her little thing. There'll be a couple more people who are going to do a little description of the different tables. So that's one of them. Thank you, Monica.
You're welcome.
Leah.
Thank you, and thank you so much for coming here. I have two questions, but feel free to just answer one. So the first question is, hearing about everything that has happened in Puerto Rico, and there's so much to react to, and you see that everywhere, especially in environmental justice work. There's always a fight, whether it's LNG or whether it's something else, a pipeline, what have you, a chemical plant. There's always a fight. So the question is, how can you, what are your thoughts on how to shift from a reactive to a sort of more visionary, proactive role, and is that even possible? And then the second question is, in your thoughts or in your work, do you think it's possible? Is there a possibility for government to be a partner in this work?
So the short answer is yes and yes. So when I first started doing environmental justice work, we were looking at the disparate siting of environmental burdens in our community. So for example, all the power plants were being put in communities of color, the waste transfer stations were in communities of color. And so we basically started by fighting against the siting of those facilities. And we moved from fighting against those to envisioning and bringing people together to envision what they wanted. And so the problem with that is that we won. We doubled the amount of open space. We got a greenway design that was facilitated by our people. And that, our successes ended up in aiding in our displacement. So what we got was green gentrification. The message was that if we're going to live in a neighborhood, the only way we can afford to live there is if we're living next to an environmental abuse, because the minute that you win and people start getting engaged and reclaiming their spaces, developers start using your wins as a way of promoting your displacement. And so we went from being reactive to being visionary and proactive to now fighting this massive displacement fight in our community, because it is a real disincentive for our people to get engaged in reclaiming space and beautifying it, so that on top of the fact that their kids have asthma and upper respiratory disease and they live in cancer clusters, they then become second-class citizens in their community because there's more policing. You can't sit on the stoop, you can't listen to music on a Saturday night, your children get criminalized. That all happens as a result of our victories. And that is not just happening in Brooklyn, it's happening all over the place. And so I'm not trying to be cynical, but if we can't fight environmental justice without fighting displacement, without fighting against the racial violence that is exacted on our people on an everyday basis. This is why everybody says that climate justice is intersectional. We don't have the luxury of choosing between going to a Black Lives Matter protest and going to one on climate change. We live at the intersection of all the isms. And so, yeah, we're visionary, and yeah, we've done it. We've won a lot of victories, everything from legislation to hooking up a neighborhood in a way that you can't even imagine. And now we have to fight that displacement fight. So I don't want to be, I don't want to be cynical, but I do want to be clear that those are the consequences for our victories. And then government. The question was about government. Yes, in some cases, it is possible for visionary governments to have a backbone, to really step up and think of community as a partner, not as something you manage, and not to manage expectations, but to be really clear about what they can and can't do, and be honest about that, and think about communities and partnership. In fact, climate change demands non-traditional partnerships, because we're not going to survive without them.
Yeah.
Oh.